Since the summer of 1947, the debates over what fell from the sky over New Mexico have run in circles. We've argued about weather balloons, crash test dummies, and classified radar reflectors for so long that the entire Roswell incident has become culturally exhausting, a sterilized mystery buried under decades of punchlines and conspiracies. But in the spring of 1974, a physical anomaly surfaced at an estate sale in Albuquerque. Sitting unlabeled in a cardboard box was a leather-bound diary. Its author was a woman named Margaret Ellen Reyes, an Army surgical nurse. Her handwritten entries don't outline a grand story about discovering a crashed silver saucer out in the desert scrub. Instead, she details being called to a restricted military hangar in the middle of the night, where she sat beside a dying gray-skinned extraterrestrial being and held its hand. The immediate problem with this account lies in the declassified personnel records. Over the years, documenting the 200 to 400 support and medical staff stationed at Roswell Army Airfield in 1947 have been released. Margaret Ellen Reyes is absent from all of them. No nurse, no civilian contractor, no medical aid matches her name. This absolute vacuum of documentation suggests a choice. We are either looking at a hoax abandoned for 30 years or a military operation that successfully scrubbed Margaret Reyes from the official record. The diary places the event on July 8th at roughly 2 in the morning. Margaret describes walking into an irregular setup inside a restricted hangar, canvas partitions cutting across the space, lit harshly by overhead operating theater lights. The air, she noted, carried an unplaceable mineral scent. She wrote it smelled like copper and rain. Moving through the first 2 triage stations, her trained medical eye takes over. She notes small, pale figures with heads too large for their torsos and limbs that appear strangely elongated. In the shock of a 2 a.m. emergency wake-up, she tries to rationalize them as severe burn victims. At the 3rd station, she abandons that rationalization entirely. Behind a thicker, metal-reinforced canvas partition, she records seeing a patient she describes in measured, calm handwriting as unquestionably not human.
It stands about 4 feet tall with smooth skin the color of old ash. The head is disproportionately large, featuring a nose reduced to 2 small slits and entirely black eyes lacking visible irises or sclera. The hands possess only 4 elongated fingers, tapering to rounded tips. The creature is breathing faintly. It is dying alone, surrounded by unfamiliar faces in an alien environment. And because Margaret is a trained nurse whose job is to stay with the dying, she simply reaches out and takes its hand. As their hands touch, she records an immediate nonverbal transmission. She describes a profound feeling of mutual recognition and a distinct mental pressure that bypasses language entirely, depositing an overwhelming sensation of vast dimensional coldness directly into her mind. Attempting to ask the creature where it came from, she feels an answer arrive in her chest. She writes a single word in her diary, then violently crosses it out. In doubt, Pleiades' fabricated diaries tend to be tidy and precise. Margaret's account is full of hesitation, crossed-out words, and a struggle to articulate the limits of her own language. The quiet collision of sterile physiological observations with intense, untranslatable empathy creates a texture of raw authenticity that studied invention rarely achieves. The instant the creature expires, the quiet intimacy of that connection is shattered by strict military protocol. The authorities step in to secure the asset, and the containment machinery activates. Within days, Margaret is pulled into an intimidating, irregular debriefing. The men in charge do not ask her what she saw. They dictate to her what she experienced, watching closely for her compliance. Immediately after, this trained surgical nurse is stripped of clinical duties and sent to process supply requisitions in a back office. This map tracks a broader systemic purge outlined in a decommissioned 1949 internal report. It shows the sudden extraction of 14 separate medical professionals across the Southwest, all reassigned to non-clinical roles due to undocumented specialized trauma exposure. Margaret's final diary entry notes an impending Wednesday transfer. After that, she vanishes into an undocumented life. When she dies in Albuquerque in 1973, she leaves behind no military pension, no service record, and absolutely no official footprint of her time at Roswell. The institutional machinery prioritized containment by systematically excising human observers from the record. ensuring no official understanding of the event could survive. The physical diary barely survived its author. Following her death, her estate was rapidly processed, and the book landed in an unlabeled box at a 1974 Albuquerque estate sale, purchased for 60 cents by a retired school teacher who had no idea what it contained. The evidence sat rotting in an Arizona garage for another 25 years. It wasn't until 2001 that an independent researcher named Philip Oates finally tracked it down, managing to photograph its 43 pages onto 35mm film before the original was lost again. This flowchart visualizes the catastrophic decay of that evidence. Oates dies of a heart attack shortly after capturing the images. The physical diary vanishes back into private hands. One set of the photocopies burns in a 2009 Portland house fire, and the sole surviving complete set is currently locked away by a Santa Fe archivist who routinely denies all requests for public access. The military initiated the total erasure of Margaret's encounter in the summer of 1947, but the natural, unrelenting decay of time ultimately finished the job, scattering and destroying the last physical proof of contact. We can spend another 70 years arguing over the chain of custody, the handwriting analysis, and missing military files. But if we put the evidentiary debate down for a moment, we are forced to confront the immense philosophical weight of what it means if Margaret's account is true. The legacy of Roswell is almost entirely focused on cold, crushed technology and reverse engineering. It ignores the quieter, heavier possibility that a non-human intelligence spent its final moments on this planet experiencing humanity through the empathetic touch of a single nurse who refused to let it die alone. By prioritizing military secrecy, the authorities permanently severed a fragile thread of communication that briefly and miraculously connected two vastly different minds. The Roswell erasure resulted in the permanent silent loss of whatever alien histories, physics, or understandings of consciousness died quietly under the surgical lights while a nurse held its hand in the dark.